All right. Well, I know who I have in the number 4 spot, but Case, take it away.
Well, buddy, I think we're going to agree on who we have in the 4 spot because I did pick the Buffalo Sabres at number 4 in this division, taking a big step. They just missed out on the playoffs last year, but this team scored a ton of goals last year. And the only real change to the offseason is that they're a year older. All these players are going to be that much better this year. And it's going to be fun to watch. Harper, get ready for lots of goals. Defense was where they struggled last year. We already know that this team has a great top 3, but it was the rest that hurt. But they've done a good job going out and grabbing some guys, and Clifton and Eric Johnson, who, he's not the first overall pick that he should be, but he's still a good depth guy to have in that locker room as well. And goaltending, I'm not personally quite convinced on a Levi UPL tandem, but there's a ton of guys out there that are so extremely high on Devin Levi. And with the story he's had so far in his career, I'd love to be convinced this season. Keep that theme going of convincing Casey. Especially with this team's team defense and goaltending struggles of last year. They couldn't keep the puck out of the net. Despite being third in the whole season of goals, they were a -4 goal differential. So they've got to figure out the team defense. I think they had some good ads on the back end, and maybe Devin Levi can be the guy to really push these guys over the top and get them in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I also have Buffalo in that spot. So here we go. It's surprising that we disagreed early, but now we might just, wrap it off here and name some teams that we agree on. But Buffalo, for me, it was very simple. They missed the playoffs by a point last year. They got older, like Casey mentioned, and I don't think it's possible to have goaltending as bad next year. I know that they had a similar tandem. They had UPL playing, they had Comrie playing, but they also had Craig Anderson, who I think was the best of the 3. But now those 2 goalies are a year older. I'm thinking mostly of UPL, who is still considered a prospect in my mind, and bringing in Devin Levi. I just don't see them being in the bottom third of goals saved above expected, which they were last year collectively amongst all the guys who played. On the back end, I kind of like how they have the top 4 set up, how it is similar to a Tampa case, like you were mentioning, how they have a stud and an anchor, a stud and an anchor. And of course, the 2 studs are Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power. So I like that structure. That being said, I don't think the defense is very good outside of those 2 anchors, if I'm being completely honest. I think, like Ottawa's is probably better. Florida's arguably, but it's good.
Better than last year.
It's better than last year, and they missed by 1 point.
Yeah.
So all of that being said, that's why I have them making the playoffs in that number 4 spot. That's where we are, right? We had Toronto, Tampa, Florida, and then Buffalo in the number 4 spot.
Well, surprise, surprise. I'm going to agree with you guys, and I've got the Sabres in the number 4 spot, and not a whole lot more I can really say. Just the growth and the step forward that this team took last season, I think it surprised a lot of people. I certainly didn't expect them to be 1 point out of a playoff spot, but that's what they did. And so a couple of things that are going to be, keys to success for this team. Number 1, getting off to a good start and maintaining it, not taking that dump that they do every year in November.
Every year.
And exactly, they get off to a great start, and then November hits, 8-game losing streak. Well, guess what? That's what happened last year. And then they had another 8-game losing streak. And so if it weren't for those 16 games that they lost right there, those 2 8-game losing streaks, and then an incredible run in the final stretch of the season to make it close and try and have that last-ditch effort to try to get in. If it weren't for those 2 losing streaks, maybe they would have gotten into the playoffs, no problem. And so that's number 1. And then number 2, it's better play on the defensive side of the puck, obviously. And so, adding guys like Clifton and Johnson, they're not world beaters, but I think they're good guys that have been added in to stabilize things. And, Chad, I totally get some of your concerns with the back end, but I think a player like Matthias Samuelsson doesn't get enough credit as well. When he is out of the lineup, and when he was injured and out of the lineup last year, you could really get a sense that blue line was out of sorts. And, you talk about Dowling and Power, another year older, Power coming off a 35-point season. I think that point total is going to continue to go up. Dowling will be right in the Norris conversation, no doubt about that. And then we know that this team can score goals. Even with Jack Quinn out of the lineup for a significant amount of time to start the season, I mean, pick a guy to insert into that top 6. Victor Olofsson, say what you want about him, bit of a perimeter player, power play, trigger man, but the guy had 28 goals last year. Yuri Kulik lit it up in Rochester last year. Does Jordan Greenway get a look in the top 6? And so pick a guy to put in there. But, it's another year where everybody's older. I think that Devin Levi, just his demeanor, the way that he plays the game, he's so calm, and what he's achieved already in his young career as a 7th-round draft pick, it's only going to get better. So just the culture, the growth, the way that they've built things, they're doing it the right way. Finally, you see the path for this team. And, Case, I look at my Sabres, and they're very similar to your Devils, I think, in my mind. The Devils last year took that step forward. They got into the playoffs. They won a round, Stanley Cup contender. I see a very similar path for the Sabres, where this year, at least we're hoping, make the playoffs, take that step, maybe win a round or two or get close to it. Then the next year, the year after, Stanley Cup contender. So that's what I see for this team moving forward. Extremely proud of the direction that they're going in. Definitely have them in this 4th spot. Glad you guys do as well.
It's funny that you mentioned the New Jersey Devils of last year, because that's exactly what Craig Button said on TSN about the Ottawa Senators of this year. He said he thought they could be the New Jersey Devils of last year. Meaning
Craig Button said that?
Craig Button said that. Which
maybe I should move Ottawa down then. Never mind.
I don't often agree with things that Craig Button says, because usually he just yells at me, and I don't like being yelled at, and that's just his demeanor. But this was, I think, a good take, and I think Buffalo is another close comparison too. And honestly, Detroit could even be that team. A team, I mean, personally, I don't think they're going to be very good, but at the same time, no one thought that New Jersey was going to be very good last season, and they just dominated the Metro Division. So I think there are some structural similarities between all of those teams I just mentioned. So it'll be interesting to see which team in this Atlantic Division is the New Jersey of the Metro last year.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it really, between Buffalo, Ottawa, and Detroit, I don't see either. I think we're all in agreement here. We don't see either one of those teams coming out and having 50 wins and finishing near the top of the division. I mean, who knows? It could be a surprise and it could happen. Don't see that. But just in terms of the step forward and the build and the direction, yeah, absolutely. It could be any one of these 3 teams, but that's where it gets tricky, because they're all kind of right there, those 3, trying to break up that quartet of teams that have dominated this division for so long. So let's get to that number 5 spot, Case.
Wow. I can't wait to be proven wrong by the Boston Bruins and also get dumped on by all their fans, especially the SoundCloud rappers of Boston. We're going to get absolutely ripped apart by them. But yeah, I'm actually agreeing with Craig Button, and I have the Ottawa Senators in the 5 spot. I think this team is really coming together, and I think we're going to see a large increase of goals this season with, Timmy Stu, Brady, Batherson, Pinto all taking another step, plus hopefully a healthy Josh Norris. That would be huge for this team. And the added depth scoring of Tarasenko and Kubalik. Haven't even mentioned Claude Giroux yet. And Ridley Gregg, or Grieg, not sure, who has looked really good at times at the small amount of time he got last year, and then including this preseason so far at camp. He was the most noticeable player on the ice for Ottawa at all times for me when I watched the game against the Devils. So I'm really excited to see what he can do. And then they've got some good depth players up front. And the back end is going to continue to get better. They've got Chikrin here for full season and Shabbat. Obviously, that pair is going to be lethal, and they're going to play a ton of minutes. Two guys that have always played a ton of minutes in their career. And then they've got Sanderson and Zub. And then an okay bottom pairing of Hamonic, and whoever gets on there with him, Brandstrom hopefully is going to be the guy. We're really waiting on him to take that final big step. So I really like what I see both offense and defense of this team. And then the goaltending is kind of where the question marks come up. I think we can all agree that maybe Korpisalo is overpaid, but he had a good season last year, and Forsberg is a solid backup. So I'm interested to see what this tandem can do this year, but I think that is where the question mark on this team is. And also, if this team can stay healthy, they've just struggled over the last 2 seasons with injuries. I think that's what's really held them back from taking a big step. And I think that this could be the year for them, and I wouldn't be shocked if they got into the 4th spot.
Yeah, so my original rankings, I had Ottawa in the 5 spot. That was having, like I mentioned, Tampa Bay at number 4. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked either if Ottawa squeaks into the playoffs. It's just crazy how we've said how much better they got this offseason, but we're still putting them at number 5 in this division.
Yeah, it's the division.
Which is like probably not good enough to make the playoffs, because there are some good teams in the Metro as well, and there's only 2 wild card spots. And if I were to guess, this is how it happened last year, that it's going to be 4 teams from each division in the playoffs. That's usually just sort of how it shakes out, because even though your team's pretty good, you play against your own division the most. And if you lose those games, then you're not in a great position to, squeak into a wild card spot. So I also have Ottawa in that number 5 spot, maybe missing the playoffs, maybe making, but I'm not willing to put money on 5 teams from the Atlantic making the playoffs this year. But I just think it comes down to the depth up front. Of course you lost to Brinkett, but getting Kubalik in return, Shane Pinto eventually when he's signed, that'll be a nice little boost for them. Tarasenko to replace some of the goals lost in DeBrincat. I think it's a good forward group, and they're very deep. A healthy Norris as well is another massive thing. It's a good forward group. I think they're very deep. They are lacking a bit of star power outside of Brady Tkachuk and Timmy Stützle, who, by the way, Tim Stützle had the quietest 90-point season last year. Just wanted to say.
Talking about quiet seasons, I think you're really slacking on the Giroux talk here, because he was a star last season. Okay,
that's true. And the thing is, I forgot for a split second that they had him, which just goes to show how deep this team is. Their top 6 forward group is really good. And then on the back end too, I think their defense is maybe top 3 in this division. I don't think that's crazy to say. I don't love their bottom pair, but in terms of the guys that they have in their top 4, it's really good. And I fully expect Jake Sanderson, after signing that massive ticket, to take a bit of a step forward this year. So that'll be good for them. And between the pipes, I see it as a tandem. I've never seen Korpisalo as a starter. I think he's a tandem goalie. I don't know if he's 1A or 1B. I think they expect him to be 1A given the money that they gave him. But I think Forsberg is just as good. His problem has been health. So that's going to be, it might be a good tandem, I want to say, going forward. I don't want to ever say it's going to be, because it's hard to predict goalies. So Ottawa, I have comfortably in the number 5 spot. I know Boston fans don't want to hear that. Detroit fans don't want to hear that. Maybe even Montreal fans don't want to hear that if they're a little ahead of themselves in their own rebuild. But that's where I have the Senators. Harper, how about you?
Case, you want to jump back in there for a sec?
There's just one thing I wanted to touch on. I could have waited until you went, Harper, but 3 quarterbacks on this team.
Yeah.
That's one thing you cannot undervalue is there's 3 power play quarterbacks in Shabbat, Chikrin, and Sanderson. So it's who's going to get that job? Are they? I'm assuming they're going to go 2D on one of the power plays, but who's going to be the guy on each of these power plays?
That's a fantasy question because I'm not touching any of those guys in fantasy, even though they're all good. I need a quarterback. I don't need a third of a quarterback. I need a quarterback. Exactly. You know what I mean? So
yeah, exactly. Well, and I think like eventually Sanderson is going to be the number one defenseman on this team and be the number one quarterback on the first power play unit. Chikrin's got a bomb from back there, and Shabbat had a little bit of a down year, but is still a great defenseman who plays a ton of minutes for this team. So talking about the Senators, I've got them in the number 5 spot as well. I think it's going to be tough to see a path where it ends up being 5 teams from the Atlantic and 3 from the Metro that end up being the 8 that gets into the playoffs out of the East. But it could happen. Like this team this division in a couple of years, I think has a chance to be one of, if not the best division in hockey. And so, the Senators definitely are exciting. They were close in their pursuit of a playoff spot down the stretch. I think they finished 5 or 6 points out. Getting Chikrin at the deadline was a huge boost. Obviously, health is always a concern with him, but when he's playing and when he's healthy, he is a really underrated defenseman back there. So really like the look of the back end. Some open competition for that bottom pair, and don't be surprised if Tyler Clevin ends up on that bottom pair to start the season. I know they're very high on him, and he did not look out of place when he came in and played a chunk of games late in the year. Goaltending. Korpisalo had a nice year last year. Certainly that's a big commitment and big dollars for him. There's always risk with that, but he is a solid goaltender, I think. Forsberg, obviously brutal year for him last year. Looking forward to seeing him back healthy. But don't count out Mad Sogard either. I think that he really showed something last year. He's had a couple of good preseason games, a good one the other night against the Maple Leafs, and so I wouldn't count him out as well. And as we saw with the Vegas Golden Knights, you need more than one goaltender, so there's that as well. And then up front, I mean, it's another year where guys like Stützle and Tkachuk and Pinto eventually, once he gets signed, a healthy Josh Norris, all of these guys are a year older and they're all locked up for a long time. And then you've got guys like Ridley Gregg coming in, even some depth guys like that Matthew Highmore looked good the other night in a preseason game as well. So, they've been able to find some depth to add in and everything. Obviously, we're going to be going to some Senators games this year, all of us, and so very excited to see what this team is going to be able to do. But again, you see the path. This group is young. They're locked up for a long time, and they could certainly squeak into a wild card spot here, but I've got them comfortably in that 5th spot. But the Senators are exciting, no question. And I forgot to say this off the top, but a good start for the Senators is absolutely crucial because they are notorious for getting off to bad starts in October, November, and then that sinks their season, and then they're playing catch up from there. So they have to get off to a good start, or it could be DJ Smith's job.